Tony just killed Bernardo, Maria's brother, Anita's husband. He comes to the window of Maria's room and says he's going to confess to the police. Instead of letting him do that, Maria invites him in and they have sex. A few hours later, Anita finds out about this sordid affair, gets mad, and sings the song A Boy Like That. And today, I want to argue that this scene, this song, is the single best thing that happens in West Side Story 2021. And I want to argue that it breaks the movie. Part 1. West Side Story is kind of a funny concept for a musical and a movie. It's based on Romeo and Juliet, that's what it's billed as, that's what it's inspired by, but you don't have to think too hard to see the difference between these works. The very first line of Shakespeare's play is, two households, both alike in dignity. It's about a feud between two noble families, the Capulets and the Montagues. The houses of West Side Story, though, the Sharks and Jets, are not alike in dignity, not even close. Consider the role of the police in the movie, a couple of racist bullies who want nothing more than to throw these Puerto Ricans in jail.
Oh, yeah, sure, I know. It's a free country and I ain't got the right. But I got a badge. What do you got?
In a fundamental way, whether they like it or not, the Jets are on their side, the side of the system, the side of authority. The conflict then is not merely Sharks versus Jets, it's people of color versus power. Or more importantly, consider the matter of identity. West Side Story begins with this song, When You're a Jet.
When you're a jet, all the way from your first cigarette to your last dying day.
And it's a song about identity, right? They are Jets, they ask to be Jets, they believe they're Jets, and they will stay Jets. What you don't see in the musical, though, is a shark song. Instead, the number the Puerto Ricans have to convey their identity is America.
Okay, by me in America, everything free in America.
And that song's just about living, moving to New York, experiencing racism, being a community and a family.
Buying on credit is so nice.
One look at us and they charge twice.
See, there really is no self-ascribed shark identity because the Sharks are primarily an invention of the Jets. In the musical, the word shark is used 15 times, but of those, a whopping 13 are from the Jets.
Sharks, 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 sharks.
My point being, the rivalry at the center of this movie is just kind of a racist fantasy dreamt up by a bunch of weirdos. There is no blood feud, there are no two sides, there are bigots, and there are the people they have decided to go to war with.
We're gonna hand them a surprise tonight.
For this reason, West Side Story has always been kind of uncomfortable as a film. Like, it shows us over and over again that these two groups are not remotely similar, not alike in dignity, but it still is deeply invested in this Romeo and Juliet plot, in telling a story about how both sides are at fault and how feuds are bad. Take this line from the song Tonight.
Well, they began it. Well, they began it.
This reads like a both sides moment to me, a claim that the Sharks and Jets are both bad, that they've been fighting forever, and that they have no idea why they're even doing it anymore. But the funny thing about this line is that we actually know who began it. We know whose fault this is. The Jets jump Bernardo on his first day in Manhattan because he's a Puerto Rican.
You started it.
Who jumped Baby John this afternoon?
Who jumped me the first day I moved here?
Who asked you to move here?
Now, to be clear, Sondheim was a genius and my favorite guy, and maybe this line was intentionally a bit strange. Maybe the film wanted to spur on that kind of critical thought. But it doesn't really feel that way to me, and the rest of the movie doesn't feel that way either. Look at the last scene, after Chino kills Tony and the Sharks and Jets carry away his body.
All of you! You all killed him, and my brother, and Rick. Not with bullets and guns, with hate. Well, I can kill too.
This doesn't feel like a moment where the Jets get over their racism, but one where the two sides of the arbitrary feud mutually realize the cost of their unnecessary war. Or look at the song There's a Place for Us, sung by Tony and Maria.
There's a place for us
Does that song feel like it's about how Tony wants to live in a world without his white supremacist friends? Again, no. To me, it feels like it's about how they want to live in a world without fighting, one where the Puerto Ricans don't hate the whites and the whites don't hate the Puerto Ricans. And it doesn't seem to completely understand the asymmetrical nature of that conflict. That it's not fighting that's bad, it's literally just these guys.
Boy, crazy boy, stay loose, boy.
This isn't to say that West Side Story is problematic or something. It's not, really. I honestly think it's more mature and thoughtful than it had any right to be. But the musical does leave something on the table, right? It doesn't go everywhere that it's asking to go.
Could be, who knows?
Part 2. In the 1961 West Side Story, Tony is kind of nothing, isn't he?
It'd make 'em cannonballing down through the sky, gleaming its eye bright as a rose.
He doesn't have a deep or complicated character, he doesn't develop in any particular way, and he's just not all that interesting. The truth is, he's just the guy who loves Maria and is white. And to be clear, that's fine. It serves the plot of the film and gets the job done decently well.
Could it be? Yes, it could. Something's coming, something good. If I can wait.
But the 2021 film isn't interested in that. In fact, if there's one thing that this movie cares about more than anything else, it's Tony. More specifically, it cares about him being kind of an asshole. And to show you what I mean, let's look at a few moments in the new life of Tony. First, we have his introduction. After singing about how great it is to be a Jet with his boys, Riff meets Tony at his job and asks him if he'll go to the dance and set up a rumble with the Sharks. So far, this is the same as the 1961 film. But then, something interesting happens. Tony says no.
You're like, blood to me. But I'm scared of myself, Riff.
Where the original Tony is cajoled into it, ends up seeming pretty excited for the dance, our new guy declines the invitation pretty sharply. He even says it would go against his parole to attend, a point which we'll of course touch on later. Okay, so what's going on here? I mean, Tony's gonna go to the dance, right? He has to go to meet Maria, so why belabor this decision-making process? Well, after this scene, Tony goes inside and talks to Valentina. Valentina is a replacement for Pop from the original musical. She runs the store that Tony works for, she's Puerto Rican, and she's kind of a mother figure to him. And in this moment, Valentina says one of the most important lines in the movie. That Riff is a racist and that Tony shouldn't hang out with him.
I know you love Riff, but he hates Puerto Ricans.
And here is how Tony reacts to that.
Riff don't hate you. Guys like Riff and me, when things ain't familiar, we just got this instinct to,
He blows her off with this ridiculous, weak defense of his friend. In the next scene we see him, Tony is at the dance. We never learn why he shows up, we don't see him deciding that, he's just there now. So we asked a question, why did Tony start by saying no to Riff? What does the film's strange choice here accomplish? And I think it serves to remind us of Tony's moral complicity. Unlike the 1961 version, this Tony is not innocent. He doesn't go to the dance impulsively because it seems fun. Rather, we get to see everything. See that not going was a very real option for him. See him hear point blank that his best friend is a racist bully, and he goes anyway. At the dance, Riff will establish the time and date of his nonsense rumble. The two gangs will fight, and if the Sharks lose, the Jets will stop hate-criming immigrants.
Why should we play on the playground with a bunch of
Control
little...
your territory, that's what you get. We keep play out of your way, you jet free, if you win. We win, you see us coming, and we will keep coming. You Sharks make like the rats and skedaddle.
In a very real sense, Tony knows all of that, but it doesn't matter to him. Next scene. This one's my favorite because it's short and sweet.
Make of our hands one hand
Tony and Maria are on a subway going to the cloisters, and they're talking local politics. Who has it worse, Riff or the Puerto Ricans? They start arguing, and then this moment happens.
Riff could have hope if he didn't try to take hope from people he doesn't know.
Riff didn't start this. It was Bernardo. He came after me.
So, Tony is lying here, lying through his teeth, and he doesn't even seem to notice it. He heard Riff say he wanted to have a rumble with the Sharks. He was told that extremely explicitly.
It is just girls, sipping punch, music,
and sharks,
and the Spicks,
and a
right?
rumble.
Which all you gotta do
You're on your
is
own,
help me
pal
haggle
mine.
over the terms of the rumble.
And yet, he turns around and says, Bernardo started it. He's just mad at me for kissing you. Now, to be clear, Bernardo is mad about that, but Tony knows better, knows that Riff is entirely to blame. But no, he can't live with that reality, and so he pushes it away, actively plays defense for his racist friend to the girl he supposedly loves. This scene is horrifying too, because Maria isn't even able to rebut him. She doesn't know what Tony knows, and so she just has to sit there with her lover/racist gang accomplice not knowing what's going on. Final scene. Tony kills Bernardo at the Rumble after Bernardo killed Riff. So on first pass, this looks extremely similar to the 1961 film. But what makes it different is the context we are now given. As I spoke about before, Tony just came out of prison for beating someone up within an inch of their lives. I don't necessarily trust Riff here, but it's possible that person was a Latino immigrant.
What do you do to get yourself locked up, Primo?
He beat the snot out of someone exactly like you.
Don't matter what I did.
This context establishes a character arc for Tony, gives him a motivation. What does Tony want? To not be that guy anymore, to not be a jet, to literally not kill someone. It's what he says to Riff, and it's what he says to Maria.
One more punch and he probably would have died. And I would have done it. Would have murdered this messed up kid who wasn't no different from me.
In the original, Tony's killing of Bernardo feels like an accident. It all happens so fast, and Tony's so innocent and sweet, and he'd never want to do something like this. Now, there's this newfound sense that he saw this coming. He literally saw this coming and didn't or couldn't stop it. He killed this man, and not in a thoughtless way and not in self-defense, but to avenge the death of his racist best friend who demanded that this fight occur. In West Side Story 2021, it is not really the world that fails Tony. It is not the arbitrary feuds and racism that gets in the way of his happiness with Maria. No, Tony fails the world.
I love him.
Part 3.
Boy like that to kill your brother.
So, we come back to the scene we want to talk about. A boy like that. Tony kills Bernardo and goes to Maria, and she lets him in, and they have sex, and Anita finds out. This was always a pretty weird scene. Maria's brother is dead, her best friend's husband is dead, and her reaction to that is to have sex with the murderer, to let him into her home, to talk about how much she loves him. That's a strange, almost inhuman thing for a person to do, right?
Very smart, Maria, very smart.
So what does West Side Story 2021 do? It makes the scene about that. For one thing, the actual song changes between the movies. In 61, Anita comes out strong. She sings furiously that Maria can't be with the man that killed her brother. But then, Maria just kind of shuts her down.
Just wait and see. Oh, no, Anita, no. Anita, no.
She sings that she really loves Tony, and that's that. That's what's gonna happen.
I hear your words and in my head I know they're smart. But my heart, Anita, but my heart.
Now, in 2021, Anita's message isn't so easy to ignore. Even after Maria starts singing, she refuses to quit.
My heart. Boy like that, kill your brother. Forget that boy and find another.
This duet rules, and it also refuses to let Maria off the hook. Sure, we can hear that Maria's heart belongs to Tony alone, and that she doesn't care what he is. But it doesn't really matter what she cares about. There is a bug in our ear, and she's telling us what this man is. A murderer who killed her brother. It's just so impactful. Besides that, the scene's vibes are rabid, unhinged. Look how aggressive Anita is, how she's blocked in relation to Maria. Maria keeps trying to find some out in the conversation, to get smaller and smaller, to literally exit the room, but Anita stalks her like prey, forcing her to hear what she doesn't want to. Look at the way these sheets are used. Spielberg first deployed these in the song America. After Anita states her commitment to living in Manhattan and not Puerto Rico, she walks behind them, and so they come to represent her hope in the future, the color and life she sees in the city. Now, Maria tries to hide behind these sheets, but Anita can't do it anymore. She keeps pulling them away, literally stealing Maria's fantasy from her. Look at how Maria's line is delivered here.
You should know better! You were in love, or so you said! You should know better.
Don't get me wrong, it was severe in the 1961 version, but still, there's a softness to it. It really feels like Maria is trying to convince her friend to get on her side.
You should know better.
You were in love, you understand. Now, Maria literally shoves Anita, desperately trying to regain power in this situation. And the way she says, "you should know better," feels as rotten and cruel as it would in real life. Your husband was just murdered by my boyfriend, but you should know better than to judge us. That is, if you were really in love. Look how Anita crumples here. There's something deeply non-interactive about this moment in West Side Story 1961. Anita's face is placid, almost angelic. We're not sure what she's experiencing, and our eyes naturally drift back to Maria, our anchor in the scene. Now it's reversed. Anita is dying here. You can't help but looking at her as she weeps, can't help but be reminded that anyone would weep if they were her. Finally, look at what happens after the song, a totally new interaction.
He will never be safe here.
See, Jose.
And no one will ever forgive him.
Will you? You can't ever ask me that. Will you forgive me?
Te quiero, mi niña. But he will have to go away.
And you will have to go with him.
Tony is not forgiven. To even ask that is a deep offense. But Maria isn't either. Sure, date Tony if you want to, and I love you, but you have to go. Of course, that is the only reaction that actually makes sense to a question like that. This scene is powerful. While I do like the original, I think this one is obviously superior. It is sharp and dynamic and cutting, and everything feels so real, like it's the way the song always should have been filmed. But see, that's what makes it weird. In this moment, where we, the audience, fully understand and connect with Anita, we realize that this entire romance is kind of perverse. Tony blows. We already know that. He enables his friend as he does horrible things. He lies to himself and his girlfriend in order to live with that moral burden. He is ultimately unable to quiet the violence inside of him. And Maria, well, she's kind of like Tony. She can look past these things. They don't bother her terribly. She looks in Anita's eyes and tells her as much. She doesn't care, and she absolutely, obviously should. In this way, West Side Story 2021 makes good on the promise of the show, the promise it is so afraid of. If the central conflict of this musical is a sham, if there are no two households, if they are not alike in dignity, then maybe the central tragedy of the story should be a sham too. We learn nothing from Tony's death that we didn't learn from Riff's because Tony is just like Riff. And we get nothing from Maria's loss that we didn't get from Anita's because Anita is the one we really feel for. The central thrust of West Side Story, these star-crossed lovers and the catharsis that comes of their terrible fates is broken at its core. And that makes a lot of sense. One of the most profound ways West Side Story 2021 departs from the original show is that it straight up rips a song out of Tony and Maria's hands.
There's a place for us somewhere.
There's a place for us. It takes their duet and gives it to Valentina, the shop owner, Rita Moreno. As I said at the beginning of this video, in the original, the song is about yearning for a better future, for a place where Tony and Maria can be happy and live lives untouched by the needless fighting that surrounds them. It's a great number and perhaps the most important one in the musical, the one that captures its entire essence.
With time to spare, time to look, time to care someday.
But Tony and Maria don't get to sing it now, and of course they don't. If they sang it, it would just come out hollow. So I know what you're thinking. I love this video, but what I really love is hearing Big Joel talk about other stuff. What an incredible and intriguing man he truly is. Well, don't worry, I've got a solution for you, and it's my streaming service Nebula. Every month I make a bonus video on there, and at this point I have a ton, like 20 or something. Last month I talked about Keemstar, the month before I talked about the Elon Musk episode of The Simpsons.
Dad, no! Elon Musk is possibly the greatest living inventor!
And this month I'll be talking about the controversial horror film Smile. There's more on Nebula than just me, of course. Lindsay Ellis exclusively makes videos on there, and there's one there about E.T. that's really cool. Philosophy 2 put her play up there, which was actually produced by Nebula, so that's neat. The service costs $4 a month or $30 for a full year, so not too bad. It's a good service in my opinion, and it of course helps my channel out a lot, so if you're interested, I'll put a link to all my sweet bonus videos in the description. So that's everything. That's the end of the video. Like, comment, and subscribe if you want to. Donate to me on Patreon if you want to. You also get access to bonus videos that way. And now it's time for my Patreon question of the video. Stephen B. Devine asks, if a goose stole one of your shoes and was accompanied by 2 goose compatriots, would you attempt to recover the shoe? Yeah. I'd attempt to recover the shoe. Because it's a goose. No. What are you talking? No, I would. Oh, it stole my shoe, so I can't. I can scare a goose easy, and I would just grab the shoe back. Or is the idea that I would be like a philanthropist, like the goose needs my shoe more than I do? Goose don't even have feet, really. They have waddlers or whatever they're called waddlers. I'm willing to wager. They don't need my shoe. I would just try my hardest to frighten the goose or perhaps distract the goose with some oats or a breads, and I would just scoop the shoe back. So kind of a waste of a question there because you already knew the answer because you could have guessed that from my own sort of archetypal masculine traits that of course I would grab the shoe back. Undoubtedly. And if it scooted off too fast and it took the shoe from me forever, just buy new shoes. Wouldn't be a big problem either. I have the money for that kind of thing for goose-related shoe problems, so it wouldn't even be a problem in that case. Thank you to my patrons for making this video possible. I'll see you in the next time. Bye.